ahead to call the meeting to order. Doug, will you call the roll, please?
Gavel would open.
Commissioner Alvarado.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dunn. Commissioner Gilmetti. Commissioner Guardino. Commissioner Kehoe. Here. Commissioner Tavoloni.
Here.
Commissioner Van Tenenberg.
Here.
Madam Chair.
Here.
Senator Bell. Assemblymember Frazier. Madam Chair, on this, my son's 18th birthday.
Well, did you want me to sing to your son?
Gilmetti's birthday, too.
But wait a minute, I heard it's Commissioner Gilmetti's birthday too, but it might not be 18. But with that, we'll open the meeting in honor of Doug's son and Commissioner Gilmetti's birthday. So happy birthday. Okay, item number 2, welcome to the region. We have Mayor Steve Voss.
Thank you, Mayor Steve Voss. Mayor of Poway and Chairman of Sandag.
Thank you.
I want to welcome you all here to San Diego. We, last year at this time, the commission awarded the first cycle of the SB1 competitive funding, and we're happy to have been able to show off the progress on our multimodal improvements to the I-5 North Coast Corridor during yesterday's tour. I hope all of you got to go on that. Clearly, San Diego is a great place to live, work, play, and visit. We have arranged for some sunshine later on today to make it a little more fun to visit. We appreciate and value our partnership with you and with all the agencies and stakeholders working to improve regional mobility and maintain quality of life. We've got a video coming up here in just a moment to highlight some of our recent accomplishments made possible through our local sales tax measure, Transnet, and in partnership with our state and federal agencies such as you. So let's roll that video.
From highways and transit to railways and bike and pedestrian networks, Sandag and its partners were hard at work building all around the region in 2018. In 2018, Sandag crews stayed on schedule with the Mid-Coast Trolley Extension, the largest transportation project ever undertaken in San Diego County.
Residents across the entire city of San Diego and region are seeing this incredibly important project come to life, and that's thanks to Sandag's leadership.
2018 saw huge strides in the North Coast Corridor Program, or Build NCC, which brings a wide range of transportation, pedestrian, and coastal access improvements to Encinitas, Solana Beach, and Carlsbad. Crews broke ground on I-5 carpool lanes, began service on the Losan San Elijo Lagoon double-track bridge, and continued the restoration of the San Elijo Lagoon. In spring 2018, the State Route 15 Mid-City Centerline Rapid Transit stations became San Diego's first freeway-level public transit stops. 30 years in the making, this project has improved on-time performance between the existing rapid and local transit service. With the South Bay Rapid project, East Chula Vista commuters can now travel from a new direct access ramp to downtown San Diego in 30 minutes or less. In 2018, Sandag worked with the North County Transit District to double-track key portions of the Los Angeles, San Diego, San Luis Obispo commuter rail corridor, or LOSAN. This increased track capacity improves passenger and freight operations. Sandag also broke ground on improvements to the Poinsettia Coaster Station in Carlsbad and worked with the City of Del Mar to stabilize bluffs along the railway. In June, Sandag and partner agencies celebrated the opening of the Interstate 5 Genesee Avenue Interchange Project, which increased the lanes from 6 to 10. The newly constructed Gilman Drive Bridge provides a much-needed connection between key locations at UC San Diego. Sandag continued plans to create a third border crossing in the region with the State Route 11 Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project. 2018 saw the completion of the National City segment of the Bayshore Bikeway, which will eventually extend 24 miles around the San Diego Bay. work continued on the Inland Rail Trail Bikeway, as well as the Rose Creek and Encinitas segments of the Coastal Rail Trail.
I have no doubt that when it opens, it will be immediately packed with people.
In 2018, Sandag further developed the regional plan to determine the future transportation network.
Looking into the future 30 years, we have to think about emerging technologies and what's going to change and try and look into our crystal ball. So it's not an easy process, but we've got the best folks in the business to help us.
Sandag took important steps toward reducing traffic and greenhouse gas emissions by sponsoring a Senate bill that passed to support neighborhood electric vehicles. A regional mobility hub strategy was developed where multiple modes of transportation combined with technology to provide a seamless travel experience. Autonomous and connected vehicle technology was tested in the city of Chula Vista, and an airport connectivity subcommittee was developed to identify future transportation solutions to the San Diego International Airport. Building on all these initiatives, the Sandag Board also set the agency to work creating a bigger, bolder transportation vision for the region's future as part of San Diego Forward, the regional plan. From rail to trail to future endeavors of large scale, Sandag looks forward to continued collaboration in 2019 to keep the San Diego region improving and thriving.
Who's that at the podium?
I think that's me, Chair.
Hassan, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning to San Diego. Glad to have all of you. And I think I told you this before. You're my favorite California Transportation Commission. But thank you very much. And I hope you'll enjoy your stay here. We're glad to have you. I'm just going to give you a brief presentation about our new regional transportation plan, our new vision moving forward. I think it's fair to say it's Commissioner Kehoe, right? It's creating some good public policy debate. So what you're seeing here is a picture of San Diego and all these green line highways and transit coming into what we think will be the largest transit hub, we call San Diego Grand Central, at the existing Spaywar site. We hope to be able to do a public-private partnership, a transit hub, and then a connection to the airport. Many of you were on the tour yesterday of the North Coast Corridor, and in the way there, you will see this beautiful 4.5-mile aerial structure that is the Mid-Coast light rail that's going to go to the university, which is the largest employment center in San Diego County. This Mid-Coast project will open late in 2021. We believe once it's open, it will surpass the forecasted ridership. Our new vision is a vision that we said we're going to accomplish it by doing 5 big moves. Complete corridors, transit leap, mobility hubs, flexible fleet, and the next operating system. So complete corridors. For those of you who went on the North Coast Corridor yesterday, saw an example of what a complete corridor is. In that project, at the same time, we're double tracking the rail. We're adding a managed lane to the 5, and we're adding an active transportation component to it. That's a complete corridor. And in the future, and I'm going to go with some pictures, we're going to enhance that complete corridor concept by deploying existing technologies. to make sure that the capacity of the system will further increase. This is what we think the future transportation system about providing choices, adding capacity to the highway system, but at the same time providing choices for the system. This is only possible because we have a great Department of Transportation, not because Lori is sitting right there, but it is through this unique relationship between District 11 and Sandag allow us to do amazing thing. And Corey Ben is here in the audience, the director of District 11, there he is. Allow us to do multiple clearance for rail, for highways. I think you'll appreciate it when you see the amount of work that could have been done if they were done separately. And that only could be done with the great collaboration between Sandag and our Caltrans District 11. So, complete corridor is one of the 5 moves. The second one is the transit leap. We're obviously want to take transit to the next level in San Diego County. We want to make sure that it's a real alternative. It is connecting places, and then build the mobility hubs. We talk about the Grand Central. There will be several ones around the county. And people say, well, the future is going to be different. Well, yes, flexible fleet is going to be a big part of that future. Whether it's driverless or with the driver shuttles in neighborhoods, the fairest and last mile is no longer a fairest and last mile, but a fairest and last 5 miles. And I think this makes it so that the system, whether it's the highway or the transit system, will work together so people could get to their destination easier. And finally, the operating system. I think every San Diegans will eventually have an app that before leaving your house, you say you want to go somewhere, you push the button, it will give you your option, it will give you your cost, you pay for it without getting your wallet, and you get to your destination. And regardless whether you take transit or drive, you will be a comparable time. Right now, unfortunately, if you were to go 11 miles driving, it will take you about 23 minutes. If you do that in transit in Sorrento Valley Employment Center, it will take you 90 minutes. That's not comparable alternatives. That's why.
9-0? That's 9-0, right?
Yes, 9-0. And we want it to be 22 minutes or less. And to do that, we are proposing what we call the transit leap. We are proposing new lines, underground and above ground, commuter rail and subway systems that goes from the border all the way to Oceanside, all the way to Escondido. And we're saying it's go in the 8. So you could ride rail when this is built in San Diego County, and you could be riding all day rail to rail and go in every part of San Diego County. I think that the only way we can make the complete corridor work. That's the only way we can talk about the transportation as a transportation system, not transit versus highway, but transit and highway working together to accomplish that. And we hope to be an example of the rest of the urban areas, of how we can move a system that not only meets the greenhouse gas emission reductions, the Federal Clean Air Act requirement, but add capacity to the highway system, have some people, maybe not 1.5%, but 10% take transit, and have a system that deploy technology as much as possible. We, this is what we call the figure 8, the transit system. We didn't come at this lightly. We came at this because for a long time in San Diego County and in many other regions, the debate was transit versus highway and highway versus transit. And we're changing that narrative to a future transportation system that's probably going to be unmatched anywhere in the world. This is an example. This is the North Coast Corridor. You've seen it yesterday. Alan from Caltrans. The first drawing shows the number of people, just notating the number of people using the freeway, is what exists today, the fares on the left. Second, we say, okay, if we 100% double track the coast, the Los Angeles corridor, And what if we deploy some technology like connected vehicle technology and add a managed lane? You will move more people, maybe almost twice as much. And then the last one says, okay, what if we even put transit on steroid and go underground? It's fast, convenient. We make all the lanes for connected vehicle technology, and we do a managed lane. The capacity of that system moves from 1 to 3. That is the complete corridor. That's environmentally sustainable. That's financially sustainable. We're going to take this 5, and with my colleague from Caltrans, Corey, we're going to take this 5 experience and deploy it to every corridor in San Diego County, whether it's the 15 or the 805 or the 52 or the 56 or the 54. And I believe this is sustainable. Now, as everywhere else, when you put these maps and things, people say, rightly so, oh my gosh, how much this is going to cost? And I have an easy answer, I don't know yet, but it's going to cost a lot of money. But the cost of not doing it is much, much higher. So with that, I thank you for being here. I thank you for paying attention. I'll be happy to take any question.
Questions for Hassan? Okay, then I'm going to jump out there. Hassan, how long have you been down here?
5 months.
Okay, and you and I in your previous life had a lot of discussions about freight, so
Yes, we
I
did.
love what you're doing here, but I didn't hear very much about your border or your port or anything, so don't forget where you've come from.
I will never do that, Commissioner. I will tell you this, and I hope you'll visit Sandag. Goods movement is as important as people movement.
Okay, every day is a freight day here, too.
Every day is a
so,
freight day,
okay,
absolutely.
you knew I was going to.
Thank you. And Lucy's not here, but you're my favorite commissioner in Southern California.
Oh, that'd get you in trouble with Commissioner Dunn, but thank you. Anyway, good work. It's
you.
always great
Thank
to
you.
see you. So,
Thank you very much.
Before we want to move on, since we, yes, of course.
Hassan already introduced himself by saying he's made quite a splash here locally. And I have to say, he has been everywhere. I mean, it's the Chamber of Commerce, it's the League of Women Voters, it's the neighborhood organizations, it's the border, it's North County, it's East County and back again. So he is bringing new vitality to the transportation discussion across the region, all transportation options. And I think he's making incredible headway. It's opened up new possibilities for San Diego having a true transportation system in the next couple of decades. And so I say welcome, so glad you're here, and really changing the dialogue in San Diego.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So before we move on, if we still have the mayor of Poway here, we still have you?
No.
Oh, he left, okay. I want to just express, since we're in your region, express our condolences for the shooting at the Poway Synagogue. I think it saddens all of us when we hear that, so please
Thank
share
you.
that
I'll
with
make sure
him.
he knows that. And again, welcome, and we'll see you later this afternoon.
Thanks, Hassan. Okay, let's move to item number 3, resolution of necessity. Chris?
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Item number 3 is a department action item. This item is a written appearance to contest a resolution of necessity. Objections to this resolution have been submitted in writing by the property owner and will be made a part of the official record of this commission meeting. Chair Inman, we should ask if there is anyone here in person regarding this item before we proceed.
Do we have anyone here wishing to speak on item number 3, resolution of necessity? I believe we're correct.
Okay, seeing none, you are free to take action on this item unless there's questions for me before you proceed. And commission staff does recommend approval of this item.
Move approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4, approval of minutes from March.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item number 5, approval of minutes from the April meeting of the joint meeting of the Transportation Commission and the California Air Resources Board. We have a motion by Commissioner Kehoe, a second by Commissioner Burke. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We're on to number 6 now. Commissioner meetings for compensation.
Second.
We had a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item number 7, Commission Executive Director Branson.
Commissioners, we wanted to share a little bit about the North State Super Region Town Hall meeting that was held on April 10th, 2019 this year. Garth Hopkins will provide a real brief update on that, but I wanted to take this moment to just really thank the North State Super Region. Wanted to especially thank John Clark and Yvonne Garcia at Butte County Association of Governments. Yvonne, thank you so much for helping us in hosting this important town hall for the commission. So with that, I will turn it over to Garth Hopkins.
Sure, thank you. As Commissioner, or Chair, excuse me, back up, as Susan said,
My boss.
the CTC Town Hall meeting did take place on April 10th at the offices of the Butte County Association of Governments located in Chico. The town hall meeting focused on the North State Super Region, as she mentioned, which is a coalition of 17 Northern California rural counties. The commissioners were briefed on a wide range of topics, including tribal government transportation planning efforts, and we heard about transportation issues from 3 county transportation commissions, including the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency, and I also heard a compelling presentation on the major infrastructure impacts in the Butte County resulting from both the Oroville Dam crisis and the Camp Fire, both of which occurred just a few months apart from one another. We also heard from BCAG and Caltrans on efforts to improve safety along Route 70 south of Chico. The town hall included a tour of the town of Paradise, which was destroyed by the Camp Fire. Lastly, commission staff, as again, we just want to really appreciate both John Clark at BCAG and also Yvonne Garcia for his extensive work on the development of this town hall, which was a very good one.
Okay, I do. I had a couple more updates. Commissioners and everyone here, just to make sure everyone knows that we are in the process of updating guidelines for our competitive programs, for the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, the Solutions for Congested Corridors Program, and the Local Partnership Program. In addition, we're also going to be updating the accountability guidelines. And so just want to thank everyone for their participation so far in this process, and I just appreciate your participation moving forward. Also wanted to make sure that you know that there was a Transportation 101 funding informational workshop that we held in Sacramento, and just really want to thank Clark Pawson, the Division Chief at Caltrans for Budgets. He did a wonderful job, and I really appreciate that, and wanted to make sure you all know that he really was instrumental, and it was really, really remarkable how well he knows not only the transportation funding, but everything that the Commission is doing with respect to its programs. And then on the staffing update, wanted to let you all know that we have hired a new student assistant to assist us with the ongoing work that's related to our website accessibility project. We've brought on board Yang Tao. He is a junior at CSU Sacramento, and he's studying civil engineering with a concentration in transportation. We've also hired John Prey. He's a civil engineering graduate from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. John spent his first 5 years in the private sector, where he did engineering design work and land development management. After that, he did spend 11 years at Caltrans working in headquarters project management, and he held various roles in District 3. He was also a project manager, and I want to thank Director Berman for allowing us to hire John. He's been a wonderful asset. He's working with our engineers, Chris Trina and Terry Anderson. So we're grateful to have him, and you will meet him in June. And then lastly, just wanted to thank Garth Hopkins for all of his work in coordinating the workshop tomorrow, the joint workshop with the California Air Resources Board for the safe regulation, also the joint ARB meetings. We have an upcoming tri-state meeting, our road charge committee, and so much more. Garth has really gone above and beyond, and I'm thankful. So with that, Commissioners, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Susan, do we have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item 8, Commissioner reports. Reports from my fellow commissioners. Okay. Well, I would just like to report, I think this is the proper place to say that we've decided to establish an ATP task force within the commission, and that will be, and I would like to appoint Commissioner Gometti, Commissioner Gardino, Commissioner Kehoe, and Commissioner Burke to that. So that will go to work shortly. So I just wanted to share that as well. And with that, are we good? Okay, everybody's taking that assignment joyfully? Okay, we're good. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 9 now, State Department of Transportation, Secretary Yanis.
Good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And for those of you that don't know, I believe this is my last commission meeting, so I was very happy to accept an appointment from the governor to be the new Chief Financial Officer at High Speed Rail. And the governor appointed David Kim to be the incoming Transportation Secretary. And some of you know David because he was in the work for Federal Highways during the Obama administration. Also, let's give David a hand. Oh, Federal Highways. We're giving Vince a hand. But we're glad to have a transportation professional. I think the reorganization of state government in 2013, or if you recall, we used to have a business, transportation, and housing agency. And in 2013, we just became a transportation agency. And while we had some fine BT&H secretaries, some of them didn't have a transportation background. And I think our reorganization now kind of sets up a process where we'll always get a transportation expert as a transportation secretary. So I've had the pleasure again to really be the designee of the secretary coming to these CTC meetings since 2012. And as secretary for the last about 16 months. And just want to pass on my great respect for the commission and all you do to make our transportation system work. It's the CTC staff as well, certainly all the partners in the audience that do so much for transportation in California. Lastly, I want to mention a few other people with special thanks, and that's the staff at the transportation agency that work so hard, and both current and past staff at the transportation agency that support the work of the agency. And lastly, I was recalling that at your January CTC meeting in Rockland, you had a number of Caltrans maintenance workers that were recognized for their efforts around the emergency response for the fires. And I thought that would be my last word, was really to recognize the 20,000 or so Caltrans employees that we don't, I think, seldom come to these meetings, but really do the hard work, sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes during rain and snowstorms. And they don't get probably called out enough, but I do want to acknowledge them and thank them for all their work. Thank you.
Thank you. So, fellow commissioners, Gometti.
Yeah. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Brian for his dedicated service to the agency, working with the CTC, and especially to the state of California. You've done a great job, and I wish you the very best working for that tyrant Brian Kelly over at High Speed Rail. So I'm glad you're back together again, so thank you very much.
Likewise from all of us, Brian. I think we've really enjoyed working with you and wish you all the best. And in your role as CFO, if you have any extra money, just send it back our way. We'll be happy to put it into the system of systems. Oops, okay. With that, before that happens, let's move on to our Caltrans Director, Berman.
Thank you. I would also like to thank you, Brian. Since I came to Sacramento, you've made it that transition of trying to understand the capital quite a bit easier for me since I'm more familiar with San Diego, and certainly you'll be missed by all 20,000 employees. So it wouldn't be a report from me without mentioning we've got somebody new. Where's Dan McElhaney? Okay, Dan is our new District 10 Director. I think a lot of you know Dan because he was the Chief Deputy District Director in District 4 for many years, since 2002. So if you didn't know him there, you might know him because he's been serving in District 10 since Dennis left, for several months. I don't remember how long ago that was, but he's now permanent there. And District 10 has 8 counties, including San Joaquin, Stanislaus, and Merced self-help counties, along with the mountain region of Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, Tuolumne, and Mariposa counties. So a lot of new partnerships that I know Dan has jumped in, and I'm excited for what he'll bring to the district. That's my only personnel change today. So a couple of other things I wanted to bring your attention to. You've probably seen some of the reports regarding Pacific Gas and Electric and their potential bankruptcy, and wondering how does that affect us. We're wondering the same thing. At this point, I want to let you know we're looking into it. We don't have a lot of information. So their impacts are in the process of being evaluated. We may experience project delays due to the work that they're completing in the high-risk fire areas. I don't believe that we'll have project delays due to the bankruptcy, and if that changes, I'll let you know. But we have identified a single point of contact to coordinate all those efforts, and as we know more, I'll be happy to bring that information back. But that's an important thing that we're tracking. So if you didn't know, May is Bike Month. Did everybody know that? Okay, and tomorrow is actually Bike to Work Day, and I know our district director here will be biking to work. But I also have some good news to report in headquarters, in that the League of American Bicyclists has recognized Caltrans headquarters at 1120 N Street with a Silver Bicycle Friendly Business Award, and this earns us a place alongside 1,300 other bike-forward businesses around the country in a commitment to building a more bicycle-friendly America. And all kinds of activities are underway across the state and in different regions. And there's going to be a lot of fun, but biking is getting cars off the road, cuts down on congestion, and promotes health. So I myself have not been on a bike that didn't have a little TV in front of it for about 20 years. But I decided to try the e-assist bikes, the jump bikes, because I kept hearing that they're easier, more women are trying those out, and so I went out one evening after work and tried it out, and I'm happy to tell you it is like riding a bike. You don't forget, and it's very easy. So if you, like me, are thinking, I don't know, it's pretty easy. Once you start pedaling, the e-assist kicks in, and it's pretty fun. I may try a regular bike, or maybe I'll move on to a Vespa or something. I don't know. Anyway, I highly recommend it. On a more serious note, I wish to thank Commissioner Inman and Executive Director Branson for attending our 29th annual Caltrans Workers Memorial that was held at the Capitol on April 25th. But I also want to thank the entire commission because you have supported the ceremony over the years. This year, we unfortunately paid special tribute to the legacy of District 11 highway worker William Kasdorf, and he was from here in San Diego. He died September 19th from a fall while he was working along Highway 163. He was with the department for almost 20 years. He was the 189th Caltrans employee to die in the line of duty since 1921. And the Workers' Memorial is a really important, I'd say it's the most important event we do all year, and it helps us keep the memory of our fallen colleagues alive and recognizes the tremendous loss that their loved ones have suffered. It's also an opportunity to remind the traveling public of their responsibility to slow down and watch out for our highway workers. And toward that end, to further reinforce this, the public safety message, next month we're going to launch our new Warzone Alert public safety campaign. The theme is similar to the campaign we started in 2015 that featured a message from children of Caltrans highway workers, because what I've learned over the years is people don't necessarily listen to us, but they listen to kids. And I recently, as we were doing some of the casting, I had a chance to show up at the district office in San Diego one Saturday and talk to the kids who showed up for the casting call. And I'll tell you, those kids, they know just how dangerous their parents' job is, and they get scared too when there's a nighttime call out. So I think I'm going to go ahead, and this is a sneak preview. This has not been released to the general public yet, but let's go ahead and check out the new video.
All right, guys, listen up. All right, guys, listen up.
My mama, my dad,
Our grandpa.
my daddy, our dad works at Caltrans.
Right on the highway.
Right next to speeding cars. It's so scary. I worry about her. Some people drive so fast. Bam, bam, bam.
Please.
Please be careful. At least slow down.
And pay attention.
Be alert. Be work zone alert.
So when this is released in soon, and we'll let you know when, if you can all help us by retweeting, putting this on your Facebook page, let's make sure everybody sees it and thinks about what it actually means. Also, I had the honor of attending the Governor's Medal of Valor ceremony on May 2nd, and this year 5 Caltrans employees were recognized and received the Governor's Medal of Valor Award. This is the highest honor California can bestow on its public servants. And these amazing public servants were honored for their remarkable acts of heroism during the Mendocino Complex fire, also at an active murder scene following a major snowstorm, and in the face of a major car accident. The people that were recognized were District 7 electrician Broderick Carmichael, District 2 maintenance supervisor Lonnie Swartout, District 2 highway maintenance lead worker Thomas Britt, District 2 highway maintenance worker Benjamin Anderson, and District 1 tree maintenance supervisor Michael Quinlivan. All 5 were awarded a silver medal, but Michael Quinlivan was unique. He also got a gold medal for a second separate act of heroism. Twice in the month of July, he worked to try and save somebody's life at risk to his own. And I heard about both incidents, one from him and one from a woman that he saved. And I will tell you, he did not fully tell me the whole story of what he had done. None of them will tell the full story of what they've done. They all say it was just my job, and I say, no, it's more than your job, because most of us wouldn't be doing that. Since the Medal of Valor Awards were established in 1959, 99 Caltrans employees have been honored for their extraordinary actions above and way beyond the call of duty. And before Michael Quinlivan, no employee had ever received the Medal of Valor twice in their career, let alone twice in 1 year. So very proud of these employees and what they are doing for all of us. And that concludes my report.
Yes, Commissioner Tavolani.
Lori, on that bike that you were talking about.
Here, I'll go.
Do you suppose you could get me one with training wheels?
Well, somebody asked me if I was going to have one with training wheels. I think you'll be okay. We'll look into it. All right, we'll look into it. You and I can go for a ride together.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Well, Lori, on behalf of Director Berman and I, it's always important that we join you in paying tribute to our fallen workers. We look forward to the day when we can honor only those previously passed and not add any more cones. But I think what speaks to all of us is the power of the transportation family, because when you hear these families speak, they're not going to a job. Their children talk about the picnics they've had together with their working crew, and really you can feel the power of the transportation family. So If you all haven't joined us there, I would encourage you to join us next year because it is really an important. And then on the Medal of Valor, I would like to suggest that we would like to honor your awardees as well. So perhaps we can have them attend a meeting and then honor them at one of our receptions that we do, because I think we lose sight of the real heroes, and I think it's CNN that does the amazing heroes, the unsung heroes, or whatever they call them, but I think we really do need to pay more respect and more tribute to them. And then finally, I love the ad campaign with the kids. I think we do stop and listen to the kids, and all of us as adults need to take that advice. I'm hoping that you're coming out with a billboard campaign as well, because I think those billboards can be very effective. For one thing, people often have their foot on the pedal when they're seeing that billboard. So if there is a print billboard campaign to go with it, I would just encourage you to use some of those wonderful images to get the message out for everybody to really be cautious. So with that, any other comments? Thank you, Lori. Okay, we are going to move on now to federal highways, and I see a big money bag coming behind that. Yeah, okay, good.
Good afternoon, everybody, and congratulations to Brian Annis. We've had a great relationship, a great partnership. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward with the similar relationship with David Kim, but people have asked, what do you think about David? What do you think about David? I said, I'm going to miss Brian because of the reasonableness, the approach you've taken, your ability to listen and kind of glean, get a lot of information, and make solid, sound decisions. So I appreciate that in the relationship. Nicole Mason is our new administrator. She's on board now. She's been with us about a month or so now, so that's a good thing. She's spent a lot of time in government, and she's at one point in time was an administrator of NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So I think that's a good thing. We have, just for everybody's information, we have the BUILD grant program. The notice of funding opportunity came out in April. That'll be due on July 15th. It's $900 million that was appropriated in 2019. It's 50% of that's going to go to rural areas. So located in rural areas, the max any one project can get is $25 million, and the max any state can get is $90 million. So that's the latest I've heard on that.
That hasn't been much of a problem for us, Vince.
I had the opportunity this week to speak at a National Tribal Transportation Symposium that's actually down here in San Diego. It was a joint effort between National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and Federal Highway Administration. And it was a great opportunity to kind of tout a little bit of what California does. I know Lori has a Native American Advisory Committee. It's one of the few, I think, in the country. There's a lot of things that have happened because of that Native American Advisory Committee meetings. A lot of input, a lot of I probably mentioned it before, just data, traffic data, that because of those meetings, the CHP and some tribes were able to figure out how, the CHP was able to figure out how they can go in and get traffic data and redact it, so take out any personal information and be able to identify site, location, incident, what the actual crash was, and be able to, so that the tribes can use that for data, because that's been a big challenge in California and for tribes across the country to compete on some of these national programs because they don't have the data. So I applaud Caltrans for that committee. I applaud the collaboration you have with that, because like I said, CHP, that came kind of from that. So CHP did a lot of work to try and make that work, so congratulations to all of that. But again, I just want to keep mentioning, and I've talked to them at this meeting yesterday. It was 100 tribes, at least 100 tribes were at this. There's over 500 tribes in the country. We have over 100 here in California. Tribes need to be at the table. They should not be handed something to comment on. They should be at the table while you're developing what they were going to comment on. I know San Diego is a great example of that down here. It's what I've continued to hear, the outreach, the involvement. I know Lori was a champion of that, and I know Corey, I've talked with Corey about it, and I've talked with Hassan about that too. So I want to keep mentioning and emphasizing that. Congratulations also to CalCog. CalCog had their Leadership Academy, so they had their first Leadership Academy, and had an opportunity to speak at one of the events there. Is this your first time with a pit? Do you realize I'm talking? Because you're distracting people. I'm very important. Sorry you have to deal with that, Joe. I'm sorry you have to deal with him. You need a bike? Are you good? Okay, good. I'm So CalCog had their Leadership Academy, and congratulations to them. I got a chance to speak at that and talking with the participants of that. What a great opportunity, great next level of leadership. So I'm looking forward to seeing that transportation leadership in our industry to continue. Lastly, I want to talk just about safety. I think we talked about safety. We talked about it earlier. Thank you for inviting me to be on the dais at the Workers' Memorial. It's always a very moving experience, and what always strikes me is how moving it is to the director of Caltrans. So every director I've seen speak at that, it hurts them, and I appreciate that passion you have for your staff. Had an opportunity at our last Strategic Highway Safety Program meeting. So we have a Strategic Highway Safety Plan. Biggest in the country, obviously, biggest collaboration in the country. It's kind of the poster child for the rest of the country to look at and say, hey, this is how it should be done. The partners that are in there, we have the health community, we have CHP, we've got DMV, we've got where fire rescue. We have everybody as part of that. But Jesse Bueller, one of the managers over at Caltrans that leads that, brought up something the other day. We were talking about the fatalities, and I had a chance to listen to Lori talk to her PE Academy, Professional Engineers Academy, that they have, and she was talking, her and I spoke a couple times at those events, and someone asked a question that struck her, that message isn't where she would like it to be. And then I heard her speak the next time and the next several times at different things, and it really struck me, getting that message to everybody that works in our world. So in the country, over 37,000 people don't come home a year. In California, it's over 3,600. On average, 10 a day. So when you're talking about a goal of towards zero deaths, right? That's our goal is towards zero death. And everybody goes, oh, 37,000's too big, 3,600's too big. Is 10 too big? So I don't think 10's too big. So let's go at 10, and we're going to try and get 10 again tomorrow. So I know everybody in this room here, I get to tell my kids that these are the people that try and save their lives every day. And you all do. In your own way, you do. You make decisions all the time that affect safety. All the time, and sometimes it's very difficult decisions. I know the weather forecasting that they're doing in District 10 for mudslides, and they're closing roads ahead of time because of projections of a potential mudslide, or potential slide, or potential danger, and they're closing the road. And at least one time they closed the road and nothing happened. But there were several times they closed the road and something happened. So the decision to close it and maybe something might not happen, that's a decision for safety. So I applaud those types of decisions. I applaud everybody in the effort that they make, but just in the towards zero death, Jesse Bueller really struck me when he said that. It became a real number when it was 10 a day. We might be able to get 10 a day, so let's work on 10 a day. That's all I got. And I'll be at the meeting tomorrow for the safe regs also.
Thank you. Any questions for Vince? Okay.
right,
Thank you,
thank you.
Vince. Okay, we're going to move on now to the regional agency moderator, Lou.
Good afternoon, Chairman, our commissioners. I'm Luke McNeil Caird with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. And at the RTPA meeting, we discussed the proposed federal safe vehicle rules, which could significantly affect the ability of regional agencies to program and implement transportation projects through our regional transportation plans. Several RTPA and MPO agencies will be involved in the workshop tomorrow, and discuss the effects the ruling would have on transportation projects in California. Next, the MPO component for Cycle 4 of the Active Transportation Program includes 59 projects totaling approximately $175 million in funding going towards increasing walking and biking in California. The RTPA group wants to thank Lori Waters of CTC staff for her coordination with regional agencies, and we look forward to implementing these important projects. The regional agencies are excited about the next round of SB1 funding programs, and we appreciate the CTC staff holding workshops for local partnership, for the solutions for congested corridors, and the trade corridor enhancement programs. These programs will improve transportation system throughout California, and the regions are engaged and will provide feedback to CTC staff that encourages enhanced mobility of people and goods. Another important program for funding transportation improvements in California is the STIP, and we received an overview of the final assumptions for the 2020 fund estimate, which is being presented to the CTC today, and the regions look forward to working with CTC staff over the next couple of months to develop the 2020 STIP guidelines, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide early input before the adoption in August. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions for Luke? Hearing none. Thank you,
Thanks.
Luke. We appreciate your service. So with that, we'll move on to Maura and the rural counties. Maura.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. The rural counties met on May 10th and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regards to the federal safe vehicle rule, the rural counties are concerned about the impact on transportation funding, particularly the ability to complete critical safety projects in rural communities. In regards to SB 152, the rural counties are concerned that the bill, even as amended, significantly reduces the amount of ATP funding rural communities are eligible to compete for and limits their ability to complete critical and transformative projects. Also, the rural counties are concerned that this process has been divisive, pitting the large agency against the small and rural agencies. We strongly believe that when the regions work together with their partners and stakeholders, we can resolve issues and problems through collaboration and compromise, finding solutions that meet the needs of all regions. Finally, we'd like to thank Secretary Ennis for his service, and especially to the rural counties, and congratulate you on your new position. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have questions for Maura? Hearing none, thank you, Maura. We appreciate it. Okay, now we'll move on to self-help counties. Keith Dunn.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to be here before you. Before we get started, I'd like to offer my condolences to Brian in going to work not only for Brian Kelly again, but for the high-speed rail project, and I look forward to buying you an adult beverage on the needed times when you need to discuss that going forward. But seriously, I've had the opportunity to work with Brian since he was in the Senate and staffer, and he's done an excellent job leading this agency. We have enjoyed opportunities to talk with him about how to deliver our programs, and we look forward to working with you in your new capacity, all joking aside. Self-help counties remains active. We've had a series of conference calls. We will be meeting here in San Diego next month on the 19th. It was 2 years ago, almost to the day, that we were here with you and had a town hall meeting. I'd like to echo the comments of the rural counties and talk a little bit about partnerships. We believe, as they do, that we work best when we work together and pull the rope in the same direction. We stand ready to remain your partners. We're your funding partners. We're your partners in delivery, and we'd welcome the opportunity to continue to have those dialogues, not only as we prepare and discuss at the workshops how we're going to deliver SB1, but on a larger program and just collegially, we stand ready and committed to be your partners in delivering this program. Oftentimes there's discussions and people have different ideas, but I think coming together and having those discussions remain important. I point out that it has been 2 years since we've had a town hall. I applaud your ATP work group. I'd suggest that we should have a self-help CTC work group, and I'll be happy to select the commissioners that can volunteer for that as well. In all seriousness, there's a lot of, with all the funding that's out there, it's really going to be critical in the next few years that we remain in close coordination and make sure that these funds that the taxpayers have entrusted us with, not only from our local perspective, but you from the state with SB1, are administered as was intended by SB1. It was pretty clear in SB1 what those intentions were, and we stand ready to help you meet your mission and ours as well. So we look forward to that opportunity, and I just extend that invitation from the self-helps to continue a very close working relationship so we can go forward and implement SB1 as it was intended. We remain active. You know, we talk about partnerships. Some are better than others. The federal government these days, I think, presents some challenges. We're fortunate to have a NEPA authority for the Department of Transportation. Self-Help Counties is pleased for the third time to be the sponsors of the bill that would extend that authority. It will be heard tomorrow in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. It was placed on suspense for various reasons. You know, the mysteries of the legislature sometimes elude us, but I believe that as confident as anyone can be about that process, that it's going to come off the suspense file and move forward in the process. As many of you know, that's a critical component that has saved the department millions of dollars, also the self-help counties, and working with the department and processing those permits. So critical piece of legislation. The self-help group has worked with the chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, who hails from San Diego, and she's very understanding of the importance of that bill. We also continue to work with the federal government to talk about the Federal Aviation Administration and their desire to use and direct some of the local sales tax measures. We have, I think, a growing list of allies, at least in our delegation in the Senate, and then also in the House Committee and some other states that also have some sales local taxes that have been voter approved. You know, I have no idea what's going to happen as far as anything moving forward, but continues to be a positive discussion. So we will continue to push that rock up that hill, and we'll see where it goes, but we stand ready again to be your partners. We look forward to implementing our funding and SB1 funding with you moving forward, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Keith?
Thank you.
Hearing none. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to go to National City and the Active Transportation Program. So the City of National City.
Commissioners, item 15 is an information item. I am pleased to introduce Stephen Manganello, the Director of Engineering and Public Works at the City of National City, and he is also currently serving as the acting city manager. National City has been very successful in the active transportation program in all 4 cycles. Mr. Manganello will talk about active transportation in their city.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I want to thank Lori Waters and California Transportation Commission for inviting me down here today to talk about our active transportation program. I do have a lot of slides, so I'm going to go through them fairly quickly because I know you have a full agenda today. At the end of the presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions. For those of you who don't know too much about National City, we're the second oldest city in San Diego County. We're a small, fairly dense urbanized community located between City of San Diego and City of Chula Vista, about 10 miles north of the border. And in addition, we're a primarily low-income minority community, which makes it that much more important that we provide transportation choices for our residents. I included this slide. It's the active transportation webpage from the U.S. Department of Transportation, mainly because it provides a nexus. It discusses a nexus between active transportation and access to transit, which is very important for our residents, as National City has one of the highest transit riderships in the county. And it also discusses the relationship between active transportation and smart growth mixed-use development, which is something we strive to do in our downtown and National City. So how did we get started? Back in 2010, we were getting ready to start our outreach to update our general plan, which also included a comprehensive land use update and the city's first climate action plan. It's brought to our attention Assembly Bill 1358, Complete Streets Act, which essentially said that local agencies are required, when they update their circulation element, to include a balanced multimodal transportation network starting in 2011. So we did that. We incorporated a complete streets network known as community corridors. in addition to a variety of active transportation policies into our circulation element. We also paralleled that effort with the city's first ever bike master plan. In 2014, through a grant, we completed city's first active transportation plan, which we're now updating in 2019. Later in the presentation, I'm going to spend some time highlighting a lot of active transportation projects that we successfully completed. What I can tell you is those projects would not have been successful if we didn't commit to a comprehensive community outreach program. National City has had a Safe Routes to School program for over 10 years. Through our partnership with Rady Children's Hospital San Diego, Circulate San Diego, and our police department, we've developed an aggressive boots-on-the-ground approach where every year we go into all 10 elementary schools, including the surrounding neighborhoods, and we offer a variety of safety trainings and incentive-based walk-to-school, bike-to-school programs. Here's just an example of some of those. I do want to commend our mayor, Alejandro Sotelo Solis, and our city council for committing to this program with general fund dollars every year. It's very important. You know, we are not the experts when it comes to transportation. It's our residents. They're the ones that are on the streets, walking to school, going to work every day. So this program allows us to listen to them and then work with them to develop projects to enhance safety and access. Here's just a few photos of some of the events and trainings. And again, a lot of these events would not be possible without a variety of excellent partners throughout the region. In addition, whenever we're rolling out new innovative treatments for active transportation, we like to provide educational materials. Here's just an example of a brochure that we developed. Okay, the rest of the presentation, I'm going to focus on projects. I have a lot of photos. Again, I'm going to go through them very quickly. Probably the biggest highlight, biggest accomplishment is that National City has successfully completed over $30 million in active transportation projects over the past 5 years. And most notably, we've secured funding to complete over 30 million additional projects in active transportation over the next 3 years. One thing to note on our bike facilities, and I have an exhibit that highlights this, when we were going through our first bike master plan, we had less than a half mile of class 2 and 3 bike facilities in National City. Now we have over 12 miles, so that's been a big accomplishment. And here's an exhibit that illustrates, you could see what's circled in red on the left, and if you focus on the bold blue and green lines, that's our class 2 and class 3 facilities, so a lot of improvements over the years. Now for the projects. This is one of our complete street projects. This was a road diet going from 4 lanes to 2 with the center turn lane, which we utilize to create refuge islands. You see our bike sharrows, and we incorporated reverse angle parking next to the school as a safety measure. Another busy corridor, National City Boulevard. We extended the median, created a refuge island, and installed pedestrian actuated crossing signs. 4th Street, which is near one of our community parks and 2 elementary schools. Very wide 2-lane street. We've narrowed the street by creating bike lanes, curb extensions at the crossings and refuge islands. Further east on 4th Street, again, you could see how we've incorporated reverse angle parking with new bike facilities. I'll spend a little time on this one. This is a green bike box. National City was actually the first city in the state to successfully go through a request for experimentation process through the California Traffic Control Devices Committee. Through that evaluation process, we successfully installed bike boxes at 10, I believe it's about 10 intersections citywide. The idea here is to create a safe area at the front of the intersection when the light turns red, such that bicyclists can get ahead of the vehicles and they're more visible to oncoming traffic. It's been a very successful program. Again, some additional enhancements on 18th Street. D Avenue was one of our first bike corridors in the city. We have about 2 miles of class 2 and 3, and this is what it looks like. Again, some pedestrian enhancements as well near one of our schools. We completed the city's first ever roundabout. This was an exciting project because it gave us an opportunity to also update and refurbish our Veterans War Memorial, which is on the right side. And in order to carry out that military theme, National City is a big military community, we got permission from the 5 branches of the military to include bronze plaques that we recessed into stone pillars around the center of the roundabout. Here's just an example of the refurbishments to the War Memorial. Next few slides are road diets. We've completed over 4 miles of road diets in National City to incorporate enhancements for pedestrians and bicyclists. Here's an example on Division Street. This is downtown National City, 8th Street. You can see the before photo, 4 lanes, no turn lanes, narrow sidewalks. We've completely transformed the downtown, curb extensions, traffic calming, utility undergrounding, new street lights. We actually were successful in reducing 85th percentile speeds from 42 miles per hour to 27 miles per hour with this project. Again, another road diet in one of our community districts, our commercial districts. A Avenue, this is right behind City Hall. It connects our downtown to one of our community parks. This was the city's first green street. You can see the stormwater infiltration basins along the street to treat stormwater runoff. Again, some more before-after pictures of how we're transforming and creating safe access for pedestrians and incorporating bike facilities into our roadway network. It's another roundabout in front of one of our community rec centers. This was a unique project. This area is a walking route to school. It floods during heavy rains, and we were able to successfully raise the sidewalk and the crosswalk so that under most storms it stays dry and students can continue to walk to school. Same neighborhood, a variety of different pedestrian enhancements, including raised crosswalk and bike facilities. More safe routes to school. We have a dirt path here connecting a neighborhood to one of our elementary schools. We've completed that with new sidewalk and lighting. We highlighted that we've completed safety enhancements at over 50 uncontrolled mid-block crossings throughout National City. Here's some more examples of how we accomplished that. This program was really successful through a variety of grants from SANDAG. We partnered with A Reason to Survive. They're a nonprofit arts organization that provides programs for disadvantaged youth. They work with local high school students to develop artistic prototypes that still meet design guidelines for bike racks, and we've completed over 100 of these racks throughout the city. This is an example of a bike corral. In addition, we completed the city's first wayfinding program. And lastly, I just want to highlight that a lot of the industry professionals have recognized National City for innovation in active transportation. Most of these awards are for active transportation projects. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Kehoe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, you know, I'm impressed that National City is kind of the regional star when it comes to ATP programs. You've been doing really a great job. We were talking earlier about the need for accurate benchmarks for who's using the facilities, how many National City residents are walking and biking as a result of the projects, and then you know, are we getting any of the folks out of cars? You know, probably not the grade schoolers, but maybe some others. And so I know you're working on getting better counting out there in the projects. I think that's something that the commission is going to be very interested in going forward. But thanks for the presentation. Good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question in terms of economic developments. Maybe it's just the lens on your camera, but everything looked much more vibrant in the after pictures, and it feels like there's a real economic development impact there. Do you have any measurements on that?
Yeah, we are starting to see some revitalization, particularly in our downtown. We have a lot of mixed-use projects in the works. Not as much as we'd like to see, but I think the whole idea with active transportation, smart growth is, if we can lay down the infrastructure, it encourages, businesses to redevelop, even if it's just simple as facade programs, things like that, get more people out walking and biking.
Well, it feels like maybe we do a little paint the town program at the same time, because you've got all those bright new crosswalks and everything. It feels good, so it seems like it'd be a good time to get everybody to want to be there and spend some dollars, and we'll all be good. But question I had, it seemed like a lot of your roads that you showed us, that you went to complete streets, were pretty generous in size. So going on a diet, you were able to accomplish that within your existing right-of-way pretty easy. Was it just the pictures, or did you have some generous roads that were maybe a little bigger than usual?
Yeah, I mean, being an urbanized community, you don't have that luxury of right-of-way acquisition, because a lot of your homes and businesses go right up to the property lines. So we're very strategic, especially when we went through our general plan and bike master plan on what roads, could accommodate a road diet. And we focused on a lot of collectors, to be honest with you. Streets that were anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000, and for the road diet streets, a lot of them were 15,000, where we went down the 2 lanes with the center turn lanes. It was a good model, and yes, we were able to accommodate that within the existing curb to curb. I mean, you saw one of the photos, 2-lane street that had a 60-foot curb to curb. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You can imagine what the speeds were like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we did take advantage of the widths that we did have within the curb to curbs.
Yeah, good job. Okay, any more questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for the presentation. We appreciate it. Now we're going to move on to state and federal legislative matters. Paul.
Commissioners, tab 16 is an action item. Staff is recommending you adopt support positions on 2 bills and send support letters to the authors. The first bill is Assembly Bill 1475 by Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan. This bill expands the authorization for regional transportation agencies to employ the Construction Manager General Contractor Project Delivery Tool. And this bill is consistent with a recommendation from the Commission's 2018 annual report to authorize alternative project delivery methods to deliver projects more efficiently. The second bill is Assembly Bill 1413 by Assemblymember Todd Gloria. This bill would authorize a local transportation authority to impose a sales tax applicable to only a portion of its county with a 2/3 vote, and the funds would have to be spent on transportation. And this is consistent with a recommendation from the Commission's 2016 annual report to increase funding for transportation. In addition, I'd like to provide an update on 2 bills with which staff have concerns and have been working with the authors' offices to address those concerns. The first is Assembly Bill 1013 by Assemblymember Obernolte. This bill would prohibit a state agency from selecting as an evaluator of a grant application a person who in the recent past had worked for an organization that received grant funding from that agency. And this bill would have a significant impact on the Commission's evaluation process for competitive programs, as well as the Commission's ability to utilize Caltrans staff as a resource. Commission staff have been working with the author's office and explained these concerns. We've also explained how the Commission's program guidelines and processes are developed in a public and transparent process and include specific requirements to increase the assurances that evaluators do not have conflicts of interest when they review applications. And the second bill that we wanted to provide an update on was Senate Bill 152 by Senator Bell. This is the bill that would change the active transportation program by decreasing funding for the statewide component from 50% to 25%, increasing the share for the large MPO component from 40% to 60%, and increasing the share for the small urban and rural component from 10% to 15%. The bill also would remove certain projects from the Commission allocation process, as well as make other changes. Commission staff have several concerns with this bill. First, Staff is concerned that the bill would reduce accountability by removing projects from the Commission's allocation process. Staff is also concerned that the bill would create a disjointed program structure and create some confusion, as for a particular entity, they could have some projects going through the Commission allocation process, while they could also have other projects going through a different process. And lastly, staff is concerned about the impact that this bill would have on certain areas of the state, in particular small urban and rural areas. This is because the legislation reduces the amount of funding in the statewide component from 50% to 25%. So it limits the amount of funding that these areas would have access to significantly. And small urban and rural areas as a group have performed quite well in the statewide component in the past. Commission staff have shared these concerns with Senator Bell and his staff, and they have committed to working with us to help address them as the legislation moves forward. And with that, Commission staff recommends that you approve this item.
Okay. Should we separate it out? I think we have two bills to take an action on, or do you want to do them all together? What's the pleasure? You
What I was
wanna-
gonna do
okay.
was,
Commissioner Alvarado.
was make a motion to accept staff recommendation, but I have some comments on the bills that we're watching.
So we have a motion, and do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Okay, I have some public comments, and we also have commissioner comments. So let's do the public first, and then we'll do ours. Is that okay, Commissioner Alvarado? Okay, with that, I would like to call Luke forward, speaking on 1413, right?
Luke McNeil, Caird, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of my agency to thank CTC staff and the commissioners for considering a support position on Assembly Bill 1413 that's going to allow a portion of a county to have a transportation sales tax measure. And we actually had the great pleasure of one of your colleagues, Jim Arp, to speak at the Assembly Local Government Committee in support of the bill. And as this bill moves on to the Assembly floor, we appreciate your support to provide additional transportation funding options. Thank you.
Okay, and then I have three speakers that I believe are all speaking to SB 152. If that's not correct, you can correct me when you come forward. But I would like to call Jonathan Matz from the Safe Routes to School. And then we'll have Will Ritter, I believe, speaking on 152, and then also Esther. So that's the lineup.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Matz from the Safe Routes Partnership. Thanks for having granting us the opportunity to speak. We just wanted to mention that we share many of the same concerns outlined by staff about SB 152, and in particular its effect on small urban rural communities. We wanted to draw particular attention to, with the change in ratios, the concentration of federal funds in those pots, and therefore the reporting requirements, which, as I'm sure you know, are quite onerous, and we wouldn't want to uniquely burden the jurisdictions with the least staff capacity with the most onerous for reporting requirements. So we are encouraged to hear that there are discussions about alleviating those effects, and that we just wanted to make our position known. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Okay, now Will Ritter. I'm thinking that you're going to speak on this bill, but I could be
That's
wrong.
correct.
Correct me if I'm
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Will Ritter, Executive Officer over State and Federal Policy and Programming with LA Metro. I'd like to start by thanking the Commission for the collaborative spirit, transparency, and overall dedication your staff brings to the implementation and oversight of the ATP. In April, the LA Metro Board adopted a position of opposed unless amended on SB 152, and a letter from our board has been sent to Senator Bell. We believe the bill will not only reduce funding opportunities for project sponsors in Los Angeles County, but will sharply limit the Commission's ability to align its funding with state goals and the state's highest needs. We have seen the positive outcomes of this competition in the form of awards for over 140 projects in 49 jurisdictions, which brought needed improvements to active transportation, corridors, intersections, and safety awareness in Los Angeles County. Among the important goals of the state is to invest in historically underserved communities, 75% of which are located in Southern California. Moving from an emphasis on statewide competition to formulaic distribution will greatly impede the state's ability to target these communities for investment. Stated plainly, it will reduce funding for disadvantaged community projects. This is especially concerning to the LA Metro Board, as they have adopted an equity platform which recognizes that equity is not a calculated geographic distribution, but a set of outcomes driven by needs. Metro is committed to improving equitable access to jobs, housing, education, health, and safety opportunities. I will add that Metro generally supports efforts to make administrative processes faster and more efficient, including those of the ATP. We believe there are good opportunities for streamlining within existing law and the CTC guidelines process. Overall, this program and the excellent staff behind it have created a strong foundation to invest in bicycle and pedestrian safety, mobility, air quality, and health throughout the state. It is also a recognized framework that has fostered strong partnerships with active transportation stakeholders across the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Will? Hearing none. Esther.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Esther Rivera with California Walks. I want to echo a lot of the concerns that have been raised already, but also want to highlight that one of the biggest concerns we have is just implementation of how this bill would roll out and the potential impacts that it would have. I think what's been mentioned before about impacts to smaller communities and communities throughout the state to remain competitive in this program is a huge concern for us at California Walks. We also think that the ability to demonstrate the benefits of this program would be at risk with a change like this. So we definitely want to, protect the program, make sure that we can advance active transportation throughout the state, and we don't see this as a good way to be able to make that case and show those benefits statewide. I also want to comment on the fact that CTC has created such a transparent and accountable program, and we really want to stick with that. So we do have significant concerns for this bill as it's currently written. We are encouraged to hear that there are potential amendments, but we think this is, any program could always use some improvements, so we think that there's ways to do that in a more collaborative way. And so we look forward to continuing to work with the author and the sponsors, but have significant concerns for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Do we have any questions for Esther? I have just a question for Jonathan and Esther. One of the questions that we struggle with a lot is data, and I know you all have been at the table since before day one. So I would just like to challenge you to help us so that we can get ourselves, I think part of the data requirement is a challenge for folks. It's maybe not something we've been counting. We're trying to collectively reduce our emissions and, have good economic development impact as well. So appreciate you all being at the table, but whatever you can all collectively help us do together, we'd much appreciate it. So with that, thank you for coming down.
Sure. Just a couple of notes on that. We agree that it is, an ongoing issue, although just as a general note, the program is a very young one still. Yeah. So, we should just keep that in mind in terms of looking for any data, and we're participating as well in subcommittees of the Technical Advisory Committee looking at counts. So we share those concerns, we share those desires, and again, that's one reason that we're hesitant to see any broad changes that would make that accountability and that data collection even more of a challenge than it currently is.
So I guess we could say we're in pre-K?
I suppose, yeah.
And the only thing I'll add to that is that I know this is an ongoing discussion for the ATP Technical Advisory Committee, and it's something that's definitely we're looking at, and we're trying to figure out how to better show those benefits. So we are having those discussions and hoping to hear more recommendations from Commission on how you think we could best capture those.
Okay, and while you're here, I do want you to know that I did a flex bike, so I pedaled the whole way, Lori, so.
I think Dave would like to hear that. I'd like to hear more walking. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I do have one more request from a public speaker. Dave Snyder.
Thank you very much. I just want to echo and endorse the comments of our colleagues from California Walks and the Safe Routes to School National Partnership, and point out that from our perspective, this
Dave,
is...
can you tell us who you're representing?
I'm terribly sorry. Dave Snyder, California Bicycle Coalition.
Thank you.
And from our perspective, this is a really unfortunate spat over a really small amount of funding. It's still, even with the increase from SB1, the active transportation program represents less than 2% of all transportation funding for walking and bicycling combined in the state of California. It's too small. We look forward to working with the task force that you've developed. Really excited that you've done that, and hope to find some ways where we can make the ATP leverage yet more money, if not increase its size, which we would like to see, leverage more money from other sources, especially local and regional sources, in a way that is equitable. So, yeah, we look forward to working with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming forward. Okay, I think that's all the public comments. So my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Alvarado?
Let's see if this will work this time.
I'm going
on. You know, I'm just a little bit perturbed, I guess. Going back a little bit in time, you know, everybody in this room who was there came together. We wrote and fought for and got SB1. I mean, not SB1, but what Prop 1B. So then what happened after we didn't have any money? We got a steady stream of money coming in. Everybody came together, put aside their differences, became regions. Some agencies even forgave their share of some of their program money to make sure that another region, so that connectivity was the key. So we were thinking regionally rather than just individually. And that worked out great. We had one money grab, and we were faced with the speaker and the mayor of Los Angeles coming in, and we stood strong. The industry, the community, and the commission all stood strong and said no. If this was a statewide program, we need to make sure that everybody came together and everybody prospered by it. Wasn't that long ago, we started defunding projects. We all got together, we fought for and got SB1, and then we were faced with Prop 6. Again, we all came together, we raised a ton of money and defeated Prop 6. So now we have a steady flow of income over the next 10 or so years. And again, thinking we all come together as a community, and then we get this, you know, and I'm ashamed that it actually came from the agency where I reside. You know, two of the things that this commission does very well, I think, is allocate, I think, fairly, and then we do some pretty good oversight. SB 152 circumvents both of those. Just two of the things that we do. You know, we can amend and change guidelines. We can't amend and change statute. And when you look at, and it was mentioned here a little bit earlier, there's not a lot of money in ATP. There's not a lot of money in the local partnership. Not a lot of money. But there is a lot of money overall coming into this community. And what's going to happen is this is the first little chip. These folks are going to try and run this bill, and then somebody else is going to come in, well, they got theirs, we need to get ours, and then here comes another bill, and then another bill, and another bill. And I think we need to stand together as an industry and a community and push back on this really hard. I'm going to do the best that I can to push back really hard. It's just, it's almost heartbreaking when you think we're not even a year into this and we're already fighting about money. Little money. The big money hasn't even started coming in yet. The steady money hasn't even started coming in yet. So I think we need to take a step back. I think we need to take a deep breath. And I think that those folks that are thinking about or already running bills, I think you really need to look in the mirror and think really hard about what you're doing. It's not about the little money in the ATP or the local partnership. It's about a whole lot of money coming in over a whole lot of years, and we can't start fighting about it now. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Have any other commissioners? Commissioner Van Kynenberg? Oh, okay, and then Gilman? Okay.
I just want to echo that accountability and transparency are two of the key bedrock components of this commission, and it seems like 152 in its current format undermines that. And I think the other thing that we heard loud and clear through the SB1 was that the state was going to pay attention and give a little bit of boost to disadvantaged communities. So in this last round, you saw communities like Avenal, Gustine, Parlier, Mendota, Tehachapi, Inyo, parts of Kings County, all of a sudden got projects. And those are disadvantaged communities. Those are some of our poorest communities in California. And the way that 152 is currently structured would undermine this commission's ability to help disadvantaged communities. And I'm confused because I thought that was one of the guiding principles that we originally were talking about, and that we were all on the same page. So as it currently stands today, I think the bill would be harmful to disadvantaged communities, and it would reduce accountability and reduce transparency.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gometti.
I'm not going to add much. I totally agree with Commissioner Alvarado and Commissioner Van Konynenberg. We just came to this agreement. We now have a steady flow of money that's going to come in on an annual basis. Everyone is going to get their projects done sooner or later. You may have to wait an extra year, but your projects are going to get done. We had, over 400 applications that our staff had to review, et cetera, and rate with the help of Caltrans. So I don't, unless someone shows me the wisdom of this bill, I, at this point in time, can't see why we should be supporting it. And unless someone changes my mind, I wouldn't be in favor of supporting this. I know you're not asking for support from this commission, and I guess we'll just wait and see what happens in the negotiations between our staff and the author. So, thank you.
Commissioner Burke.
I'm in a kind of a unique position that I represent a very large county, and also within that county are some very small cities. And those small cities have real difficulty competing because they don't even have the staff to be able to put together, in many instances, the type of a program and to follow up on those programs. They don't necessarily have the kind of staff to be able to compete in a real way. Now, I particularly am very supportive of this whole program. I don't like to see us competing that way. I don't see a reason that we should find half of us on one side and others on the other side as we approach hard work for money, and we don't want to lose any of that SB1 money. And I understand that often when you start putting legislation together, and maybe this is the fact that my legislative background comes forward, I always believe that there's not necessarily bad bills. And I used to hear that all the time. This is a bad bill. My feeling is there's never a bill that can't be corrected, and if you have something that you think is wrong with it, work with the author and work with the constituencies to put it together in a way that solves the problem. I would hope that we not get way out in front and saying, let's kill it, let's kill it, let's work together. And Mr. Gometti, I agree with you. This is not a time for us to take a position that is detrimental to the ultimate goal we're trying to achieve. So I don't see any reason we have to take any position other than to work with author, work with constituencies, and rather than seeing ourselves as out front, let's kill it. And there are many people in my area who certainly take that position. Let's oppose it. I would like to see us take a position with work with author, work with the constituencies, and at this point, not take a position in opposition.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Anybody else? Commissioner Cardino.
Thank you. My colleague commissioners have already been so eloquent on this. I just want to thank those who have been communicating with us. It's been immensely helpful, especially to hear from smaller counties and rural counties that we don't always have the opportunity to hear from. So thank you. These are hard conversations to have, but I truly believe that overwhelmingly folks' hearts are in the right place. We want to serve as many communities as we can with a program that we all know is vital. And whether it's large communities like some in the Bay Area where I live, or smaller communities in our disadvantaged communities throughout our state, and our small and urban as well as rural communities as well. So let's continue to try to work together on how we deliver as much benefit with these dollars as we can, and keeping in the accountability that we all want to see to ensure that we stretch these dollars as best as we can. I also, whenever we're talking about ATP, just want to take the opportunity again to thank Lori Waters and our team for the amazing job they do to work with all stakeholders throughout our state to deliver this as effectively and as efficiently as we possibly can.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kehoe, you're okay? And Commissioner Tavaloni, I just want to make sure everybody has a chance. We're good? Okay. I would just like to say that I too am hurt by the fact that this has become very divisive, as Maura reminded us, and also Keith. I don't think that's good for any of us in the greater transportation family. Reminds me when my kids were little and they were fighting, and I would pull over my big station wagon and we would have to sit on the side of the road till we could move forward together. So I don't have a big 9-passenger wagon anymore, so I can't do that. But anyway, I do hope in the spirit of coming together we can figure that out. And I do take very seriously the commitment to the people of California for the Road Repair and Accountability Act that they have entrusted all of us to deliver on. So I think we need to be respectful. So with that, we do have a motion and a second. I think we have concluded all of the discussion. If we're, do you all have clarification on what the motion was? You're good, Paul? The motion was to support, your recommendation was to support AB 1475 and AB 1413 and
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and then we're watching the other ones and working with the author on the other ones, I think was how you described it. So, okay, with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate that discussion. So we will now move on to the budget and allocation capacity update, number 17.
Commissioners, tab 17 is an informational item. Clark Paulson will present an update on budget and allocation capacity.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you again. In the support of the ATP program and Bike to Work Day, Director, I'd be happy to take the next month to bike back to Sacramento for work. Probably won't work.
Nice try, Clark.
Yeah, transit may be the answer. So just an update. As of the March meeting, which was held in mid-March, as it relates to the capacity of funding for the fiscal year that was available or is available for allocation. As of that point in time, $4.3 billion has been allocated of an available $6.9 billion, which represents 62% of the overall capacity. This is good progress. It's not a concern. You're usually very busy in May and June, and we anticipate steady progress. There's one thing I did want to highlight. As you look at this information, you will see that the STIP program is 100% allocated. And that's a nice accomplishment, although perhaps a little, maybe feel odd in the middle of March. The 100% allocation is largely attributable to the beginning of the SB1 programs. And many of the SB1 program projects had, as part of the funding package, STIP funding in future years. And in order to facilitate moving forward with those projects, there have been some instances where you have approved allocating funds from the STIP that were originally programmed, for instance, in next year. We brought those forward in order to get those projects moving. At this point, we are comfortable proceeding with STIP projects. We're not recommending any suspension. We recommend continuing to allocate STIP projects, relying on the funding that will be available in next fiscal year, which is just around the corner. I also wanted to report to you on the past quarter's activity for G12 allocations. As you recall, this is authority that is granted to Caltrans by the Commission to make certain adjustments to project allocations of a limited nature. And as of the end of March, we have 308 SHOP projects that have been adjusted with increases of 78 million and decreases of 182 million for a net decrease overall of 104 million. There have been 6 STIP projects that have been similarly adjusted with an overall increase to those projects of 3 million. And so things that are upcoming, although the first item is actually not upcoming anymore. When we put this together, we were anticipating the governor's announcement of the May revision to the governor's budget. That happened on May 9th. The announcement the governor made has no impact on transportation budget or programs. The budget process we anticipate will conclude in June with an adoption of or enactment of the budget by June 30th. And also in June, we will talk more about the fund estimate allocation and to finalize that in August. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Do we have questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll move on to item 18. And there you are, conveniently at the podium.
Commissioners, tab 18 is an action item. Caltrans is requesting your approval of the 2020 STIP fund estimate assumptions. Clark will present this item, and then afterwards I will provide comments and recommendations from Commission staff.
Thank you. So last meeting, we reviewed draft assumptions, and since that time, we have been working and received input from your staff. Ultimately, the adoption of the assumptions at this meeting will lead to the calculations of the fund estimate, which will be coming in future meetings. We do not anticipate at this point any significant impact, as I mentioned, from May revision or any final enactment of the budget in terms of the fund estimate or its assumptions. The Federal Transportation Act expires next year. At this point, we're not aware of any concrete proposals for a new federal act, and so we'll talk about the recommended assumptions we have as it relates to federal funding. Ultimately, the fund estimate leads to the conclusion about what money we have to program for the SHOP and the STIP programs. And what we're trying to do as we arrive at assumptions is achieve the balance and the correct anticipation of resources. So we have projects coming forward that align with the resources that are available and make good on our commitments to the citizens. So at the last meeting, there was a question raised by Commissioner Dunn about how have we done in the past in terms of accuracy with our past fund estimates. And in short, I'll just say that accuracy of fund estimates has been a significant challenge. I'll defend the commission and the department a little bit. The challenges really have not originated, for the most part, from what you have assumed or what we have calculated, but rather they have to do with events, most frequently legislative actions, often in reaction to economic factors. And so we just have a few examples as we've tracked the last several years, as we've dealt with debt service payments and the direction of revenues for that purpose, as we've dealt with transfers and loans and repayment of loans and of the setting of excise tax rates. I won't go into great detail. This slide could actually be tiny, tiny font if we reviewed the last 15 or 16 years of fund estimates. The bottom line is that this is a challenge. However, I have some optimism that SB1 brings stability to the revenue sources. Prop 69 brings protections that I think essentially head off some of the issues we've faced in the past. And so I have optimism of coming back in a couple of years, if I am so fortunate to come back, and talk about how accurate we were in this round. The other benefit as it relates to the structure of the fund estimate is that we get to redo it every 2 years. And so as factors occur, we're able to adjust our fund estimate structure and levels. So I'm going to review a few of the very significant assumptions that we have talked about. The first has to do with assumptions about fuel consumption. And we evaluated 4 sources of forecasts as it relates to fuel consumption. One of those is an industry, ExxonMobil, that doesn't sound right, ExxonMobil estimate. 3 are government sources, federal agency, our State Department of Finance, and the State Air Resources Board. And we recommend the use of the Department of Finance's projection as it relates to fuel economy. We took a look back at the Department of Finance's historical accuracy and found that their projections have been within 1% of the actual fuel consumption. They do have take into consideration separately diesel and gas consumption, and they have an opportunity to update their projections late in the fiscal year. I wanted to show you pictorially how this looks in terms of these different projections. The red line on the upper portion of this chart is the ExxonMobil projection. The blue line is the Department of Finance projection that we recommend. The yellow line is the Energy Administration's projection, and the green line is the Air Resources Board. And if you look at those lower 3 lines, there's a very little distinction really. In terms of revenue impact, there's a very small, over the period of the fund estimate, a very small variation. And so we feel very comfortable that the Department of Finance is able to get this right and is consistent with other projections. I mentioned earlier about the status of the federal act. We are recommending an assumption as it relates to federal revenues that essentially continues the pattern of escalation that's built into the current federal act. We don't know exactly how this will play forward in a future federal act, or perhaps even more likely has been a historical pattern that we have continuing resolutions that bridge the current federal act until a new federal act is adopted. But if that occurs, we would anticipate from past practice that the escalation rates that are in the current FAST Act would continue. I also wanted to talk about the construction project cost escalation assumption. So I want to talk a little bit about what this escalation rate does and what it doesn't do. So this escalation rate really does not impact the math of the fund estimate calculations. It also does not result in more or less supplemental votes coming before you. The supplemental votes, the project estimates are updated as each phase moves forward. And so this cost escalation rate is really used for more long-term evaluation and development of projects and a pool of projects. And the individual project estimates are adjusted on an ongoing basis so that this doesn't play a factor in individual projects as they're coming forward for allocation. What this really does is guide Caltrans over an extended period about how many projects to develop through the project initiation development. And Mr. Johnson will talk to you perhaps a little more about the 10-year State Highway System Management Plan. That's where this rate comes into play as Caltrans determines the extent of projects to develop over a long period. And this guides us in what resources matched with the projects that could be developed. And I'm going to show you a picture as to how this plays out. So on this chart, the blue bars show one of the alternatives, which is an escalation rate of 5.3%. And the blue bars show how many projects Caltrans over a long-term period would develop under this assumption, and the cost assumption is costs escalate. The orange bars show the number of projects that would be developed at the 3.2% alternative escalation rate, which we recommend. And the reality here is that we're trying to forecast construction costs. And that's a dicey prospect over the span of 10 years. We believe it's prudent to err on the side of developing more projects than less. And the reasoning is, as we develop more projects, we're in the best position to use the funds when they're available and deliver transportation improvements as quickly as we can. It's easier to push a project out a little than it is to have not enough projects developed and have revenue sitting, and there's really nothing to pull forward other than move as quickly as we can. So this is the reason we recommend the 3.2% alternative instead of the 5.3% alternative. In terms of this projection, we're talking about 431 more projects that are ready to go as we achieve development over a long-term period. And the last assumption I wanted to talk about was as it relates to the SHOP minor program. I wanted to provide a little bit of background. This assumption has to do with the amount of money in the SHOP that's set aside for minor projects within the SHOP. The minor projects are beyond the scope of the maintenance program, but they're less extensive in terms of development and monetary value than a more complex SHOP project. The project amounts are limited to $1.25 million, and they must be completed within 1 year. The Commission's role as it relates to the minor program is to adopt for the larger minor A projects annually a list of projects that Caltrans brings forward and is adopted by the Commission. Those projects can be revised during the year, but the Commission would need to approve any revisions, and Caltrans reports on what has been used in the minor program at each meeting through reporting. And the SHOP, the minor projects accomplish the same purposes as the more complex SHOP projects. Oops, wrong way. So Caltrans' recommendation is to increase the minor project reservation from $150 to $250 million. We believe that this provides some opportunities for small business participation. The overall SHOP program, small business participation is around 30%. With a minor program, it ranges from 63 to 80%. We believe the minor program allows greater opportunities to partner with local agencies where the state highway system interfaces with local roads. And the minor program also allows us to deliver more quickly in an expedited fashion and be more nimble in addressing issues as they arrive before they become more severe or costly. And finally, the minor program is the SHOP program. The nature of the projects that are developed and delivered are similar to the overall SHOP program. Oops. So just some examples of minor projects in this next slide, and I won't labor this any further, and I'll move on from the recommendation with the increase in the minor program. So that really concludes the discussion. As I mentioned previously, the next step is the actual calculation of the fund estimate. We will bring a draft of the fund estimate in June, and that'll actually have some numbers attached to it, which is always very exciting. During the period between June and August, there will be the opportunity for your direction and interaction with your staff to arrive at the final fund estimate. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Turn the microphone on. Any questions? Paul?
Yes, Commission staff would like to provide some comments on the
Thank you.
assumptions. So Commission staff is recommending that you adopt the assumptions that Clark described with one exception, and that's the assumption regarding the increase for the minor program. Caltrans is proposing to increase it from 150 million annually to 250 million annually, as Clark described. Commission staff's concern with this is that Caltrans has not provided sufficient information for us to determine how this will affect the department's progress in meeting the SB1 targets for the 4 primary asset classes. We think that you could still adopt the other assumptions today and leave the minor program at its current funding level. And when the department comes back in June with the fund estimate, if they can provide additional information by that time to justify how the increase will meet the SB1 targets, then you'd have better information to make a determination whether to increase funding for the minor program.
Do we have any questions? I have a question on that. So what you're recommending is don't change the minor amount now, but reconsider perhaps in June, and we would have the authority to do that?
Correct.
Okay, because one could look at SB1 came in with new money, but we didn't change this program. We left it at the old number. I guess we moved it periodically, but it's been at its 150 for a while. So I would like more insight, because the list of the examples that Clark gave, those programs would still potentially get done, but just not get done in the same timeliness. Is that true?
This really has to, I think, to do with being able to do smaller projects for those purposes and a greater volume. And I think we'd be very happy to work to demonstrate how this matches, and speaking to SB1, the additional resources, how this matches with the SB1 mandates as it relates to the targets. We can certainly continue in developing the fund estimate, and leaving this item as something that could be reconsidered won't have a detrimental impact on our process.
But leaving it to be reconsidered to June, or what's going to change between May and June?
So I think in my optimistic theory, we bring forward compelling information. I'm being a little facetious, but we have a continuing dialogue about how we think this will be beneficial and how it will continue to support achieving the targets. It's not a huge amount of money, and it's all part of the SHOP program, and so the fund estimate capacity is the same regardless of whether we have this reservation increased or not, so we can continue doing our work, come back in June. And
well, I think we're interested in continuous process improvement, and if there is some ability to deliver better, then let's do that. But we also have accountability in the name of SB1, so I do think that's important. But I just wanted to make sure that we weren't nailing it down so that it would, some project wouldn't be able to move. So I think we would love to hear some more in terms of best practices, best ideas. I love small businesses being an opportunity. We hear over and over again that we have a shortage of contractors sometimes, so anything we can do to help grow that universe, I think, is good. So let's see what you all can come up with. So we have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Any discussion? Commissioner Van Kynenberg.
I'll just echo that I forwarded to both Mitch and Susan some information on how the minors program is working in District 6 and would like to have a further exploration of how I think there is some compelling evidence that's helping meet some of our asset goals. So I just want to make sure that I'm supportive of the motion, but want to hear more by June.
Okay, no further discussion. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? We abstaining. Okay, we'll see you in June. We are now going to move on to item 19. Amy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is an informational item. I'm here to share with you, as well as our partners and stakeholders, some changes that will be coming to the Commission's website, particularly the way that we process and post documents online. Assembly Bill 434 requires the Director and Chief Information Officer of each state agency to post a signed certification on its public-facing website by July 1st of this year, confirming that the website and its content meet specific accessibility standards. For the purposes of this discussion, accessibility refers to the practice of designing a website and its content so people with a wide range of disabilities can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the information posted on that website. As you know, Caltrans hosts and maintains the Commission's website and provides assistance to our staff in maintaining and updating its content. Additionally, Caltrans Chief Information Officer also serves as the Commission's Chief Information Officer. In order to obtain our website certification by July 1st, several tasks must be completed beforehand. First, the Commission's website must be rebuilt to make sure all the underlying infrastructure is compliant with the latest accessibility standards. Caltrans and its web design and support team are currently in the process of rebuilding the site. It will look very similar to the current layout with some changes designed to make it easier to navigate. Second, all content migrated to the Commission's new website, primarily documents, must be converted to meet the criteria established in Assembly Bill 434. This complex conversion process, which is very time and labor intensive, is commonly referred to as document remediation. Finally, the Commission must remove unremediated content older than 3 years from its website. These documents will be saved internally to be provided upon request. I'd like to thank Caltrans and its website design and support team for their support in this effort. The Commission appreciates that the Department is remediating the majority of the Commission's documents for the last 3 years to ensure that we're in compliance by July 1st. I would now like to introduce Caltrans Chief Information Officer George Akiyama. He's here today with a closer look at our accessibility project.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Secretary Annis, Directors Berman and Branson, thank you so much. And I want to start with a thank you to Secretary Annis for all your service. You know, I want to echo Director Berman's sentiments. You will be missed. I do appreciate, you know, all the professional and personal advice you've given me over the years. And I also want to say I'm happy to see the dynamic duo back together. So that's very positive. And on that note, Director Berman, I want to offer that I'll ride a tandem bike with Clark if that cuts the time down, you know, for the month of May. We'll talk. Okay, very good. I'm here to talk about website accessibility, and you heard the introduction. It's really stems from a federal mandate and a state mandate. It started with federal mandate 508, which, as you heard earlier, mandates that information technology be accessible to people with disabilities. This was soon followed by a California state mandate for all state departments to also be accessible for websites, for applications to be accessible to people with disabilities. It also added to that the requirement for certification by the director and the chief information officer that all of the content is acceptable or as accessible. The good news is we are going to re-platform to a newer, more modern technology, which helps us stay on a single platform towards the future. Also, that accessibility is really important, for folks who have difficulty understanding our content now. So in short, it really stems from these two mandates. Let's take a look at the CTC website overall. Currently has approximately 200 web pages and about 3,000 documents. What we're looking at is a post-July 1, and July 1 is the date that all the material has to be accessible, approximately 94 web pages and 1,000 documents. What that will be is all the documents on the current website from 2015 to current. It also includes remediation of agendas and voting records. So when folks go out there and they're trying to find something that's older than 2015, at least they'll have that trail so they can make the right request for a document that's older than 2015, and then staff can remediate those documents by request. So there will be a breadcrumb trail for folks to be able to get information. Internally, we'll also maintain all of those documents. It's not as if they're being deleted or going away. So for, commissioners, commission staff, all that information will remain available by request. Let's take a little closer look at some of the web pages. What you have here are the statistics on the top 20 viewed web pages. What we did is we turned on Google Analytics to get a perspective of what pages were being viewed. As you can imagine, homepage, many of the programs, more recent events and minutes. Also, about us, some general information such as about us, exec bios, content information. Now looking at the flip side of the coin, here's the 20 least viewed pages. So some of these pages, from November to April have only been viewed once, maybe a couple times. And this is the material that won't make the transition, right? They won't be remediated. Simply speaking, they just don't have very many views. If at a point in time somebody does request that information, though, we can remediate on the fly and provide that data. But really, the goal here is to bring forward the information that's most viewed. And at this point, we're looking at bringing forward information from 2015 forward. That brings me to a quick summary. We'll have a new compliance site ready by July 1. As it turns out, by looking at the analytics, 94% of the web pages that have been viewed more than 100 times over the past 6 months will be available. They're going to make the transition to the new site. Meeting materials prior to the 2015 will be available at the new site and at an agenda and vote list level, so folks can still do their investigation and look for those documents that may not have made the transition. And all CTC materials and documents will be available on internal servers. Nothing is getting deleted. We will always have that information available. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
We have questions? I just have one question. I asked this question, I was at a trustee meeting for a university. I serve as a trustee, and we have the 508 rules. And so I asked how we handle that, not wanting to be punitive and take information away that's currently available while we're trying to provide for all. So we've used a hotline. Is that not acceptable? I mean, I just hate to take away 2,000 pages. We pride ourselves on being transparent and open. And it's very different if I can go look for something versus I have to call somebody and hope they can get back to me in a timely manner. So it's not allowable? I mean, you say you're going to save all this, but I don't know if you're saving it and it's open to everybody, but it sounds like you can't make it open to everybody because that's discrimination. But on the other hand, it seems very punitive to take away a third of our documents if we were at we were at 3,000 and we're going to...
We're going to 1,100.
So you're taking away two-thirds of our documents. So I don't think that was the intent of the legislation.
I totally understand the question, and, in the spirit of transparency, I don't think anybody wants to take any documents away. You mentioned that was a university setting that you were looking at. AB 434 applies to all the state departments, so that state requirement is sounds like it's a little more stringent that you have.
But I'm not an elected official, so we can ask our elected officials when we're with them. I don't think they realized that they were going to take some things away in the process of making just accommodations for everybody to have access to everything. So it seems to me, I'd be real interested to know if we can somehow leave what the old stuff that's already there with a hotline for anybody else. I don't know if anybody has checked that out legally, and it's not legal, so we frankly can't do it.
We have. I think all state departments, quite frankly, are struggling, with this mandate in order to meet the July 1 date. We have explored all those avenues, via our legal department, as well as discussions with Department of Rehab and discussions with California Department of Technology that's providing oversight over this whole remediation effort. So I feel your pain. I understand, the balance between the benefit of transparency, but at the end of the day, the mandate, and given the page counts and the page views, it outweighed, that desire for transparency. At the same time, I would say, we're definitely going to track the number of requests we get, and, if we find that there's an increased volume or increased desire for older documents, then we can begin to look at, prior years, whether it's 2014 or previous, to see if that demand is there from our constituents.
Well, in my day job experience, I can tell you what we have found most often is an opportunistic attorney trying to get a settlement, and it's not really a person who didn't have access to something that they wanted. So I want us to be as open and have everything. I mean, it's bad enough we in transportation speak a foreign language, in my opinion. We speak transportation acronyms. So if you're an outsider, you have to really kind of peruse to understand what STIP and SHOP and all those things are. But anything we can do. So, I mean, I don't think we're taking an action on this, but if we can maybe try to help folks understand that we're, gonna, because we've arbitrarily, or I guess they told us to go back 3 years, or was that defined in the law?
Now, that was not the 3-year term was not a legal mandate. But, as it turns out, as we look at the volume of information that's been reviewed, 3 years ended up being a very reasonable amount of time, given that, 94% of the content that's been reviewed, more than 100 times over the last 6 months, is making the transition.
Okay, well, it's not an action item for us, so thank you for the information. So. Are the troops ready for a bio break? Is that what I'm...
But I want to hear something about aeronautics.
I'm going to pass on that comment. Commissioner Tavaloni, would you like to address that? Okay, we'll keep working, and then we'll take a bio break a little later. So I think the number 20 comes after 19, so we should be on item number 20, so let's do it.
Thank you, Commissioners, for this very important topic. Also, as a side note, I just want to mention that there actually is a very high percentage of Commission staff that commute to work on a daily basis year-round. I think we're probably at 25%. Which is a pretty impressive number. And today I will be logging my 4 miles because I commuted on a jump bike to District 11 for the RTPA meeting. So that was an experience. Okay, Commissioners, tab 20 is an informational update on Caltrans Division of Aeronautics draft 10-year capital improvement plan. Public Utilities Code 21702 requires Caltrans to revise and update the 5 elements of the California Aviation System Plan every 5 years, with the exception of the Capital Improvement Plan, which is to be updated every 2 years. Commission staff understands that the Division of Aeronautics has started the update of the remaining CASP elements. However, this is not scheduled to be completed until December 2020. A request for the approval of the final capital improvement plan will occur at the June meeting. And if you have any questions about this, I do believe Caltrans has a representative.
Questions?
I'm going to have to research the website.
All of you need to.
Oh, we've lost it now, so, okay. Thank you, Terry, for that very, very eloquent presentation. So we're good. Hearing no questions, we will move on to the next item, which is item 21 on the MPO perspective on the safe vehicle rule.
Yes, Commissioners, tab 21 is an informational item. Last August, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration proposed the safer, affordable, fuel-efficient, or safe vehicle rules, which would amend existing corporate average fuel economy, or CAFE standards for passenger cars and light trucks. This proposed new rule will lower federal requirements for fuel efficiency standards. These new fuel efficiency standards will have an impact on air quality and also on public health. To express our joint concern regarding the proposed safe vehicle rules, the Commission, along with the California Air Resources Board, will be hosting an informational workshop tomorrow on this proposed federal rule following adjournment of the Commission meeting. Today, Mr. Hassan Hikhrada, the Executive Director of the San Diego Association of Governments, is here to provide his perspective on the safe vehicle rules. With that, I'll turn it over to Hassan.
Thank you, Garth. Good afternoon again, Commissioners, Executive Director. So this rule would impact 14 of 18 MPOs in California. The rule would invalidate the existing MFAC and would require the Air Resources Board to develop a new one. Just for the San Diego region, $2.7 billion for program non-exempt projects through 2022. That is not limited to highway projects. That includes transit projects, bridges, local projects, and highways and interchanges. They are very critical projects in San Diego County, whether it's the West Mission, Bay Bridge, the State Route 163 road interchange, the regional access, the Mid-Coast Rally, which is a $2.2 billion light rail to the university. You toured yesterday the North Coast Corridor. That's one of the projects. The bottom line is, if this rule were to be finalized the way it planned, any of these projects could experience some significant delays for it to be programmed. And I don't think any of us at the Commission or in the regions would like to see that happen. So we look forward to working with Susan and working with our federal partners and state partners to make sure whatever we do remembers the impact, the real impact on real projects that's in place right now, and that cannot really afford delays in some cases. So with that, I thank you and be happy to take any questions.
Anybody have a question for Hassan? Yes, Commissioner Committee.
Well, we'll probably take this up tomorrow, but, you know, what happens if the state of California just says we're not going to comply?
We hope they don't say that. Because these
No,
are...
I'm talking about lowering our standards. In other words, we hold on to the standards that we have. What happens?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is the federal government has to approve whatever amendment to our tips are.
Right.
Doesn't matter what the state...
I'm really probably more interested in what the automobile manufacturer is going to do, because I don't think they're going to want to miss out on the California market. It's one of the largest in the world.
I think your executive director would agree that this is something we need to be around the table with one voice tackling this issue.
So Hassan, it's my understanding that if they come out with any rule that's different from where we are today, our model
Would
will
require,
have to be redone because it's hardwired. It is built around certain assumptions in there, right?
So Chairwoman, it's not only the model, yes, the model has to be done, but it's not as easy. This is going to take somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to get it through a peer review, national peer review, to get it accepted, and to get it to be used for conformity analysis. And we have great federal partners here. I would never want to say anything that Vince will take the wrong way. Where is Vince? Because, but this would require a huge delay, and some projects really cannot afford huge delays. I'll give you an example, the mid-coast projects. We received $1 billion of federal funds. We get about 100 million. I can tell the feds will keep the money for 2 years. And so this is real stuff, but the modeling takes time. That's the whole issue. Is it's not like you push a button and you have a model. It's going to take at least 18 months.
So hopefully you all will be here tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, let's have this.
This is just a
information.
preview for you guys.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
okay. Well, I think, it's going to impact our airports. I think it's much bigger than the list that we have identified as well. I would think our border crossing, our airport, we're going to have a whole bunch of touch points
Agree.
where this could be detrimental.
It's going to impact the goods movement more than anything else. Commissioner.
I worry about that.
I have to say that. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a public speaker, James Corliss.
Commissioners, I want to add my voice to Hassan's. James Corliss, Executive Director of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG, up north. This literally is a 5-alarm fire. If this rule goes forward as we think it may this summer, as Hassan said, it invalidates the MFAC, the air quality model for California. Our region is the first out of the gate on the higher greenhouse gas targets, the 19% target for the bigger MPOs. It looks like that would mean that we wouldn't get federal approval for our MTP SCS that we need by next February. For our MTIP, we would go into a lapse. Just like Hassan showed you the projects here in San Diego. You remember touring the 8065 interchange in Placer County? That's part of a lapse. I-5 managed lanes up to our airport, light rail extensions, our SB1 projects that we are thrilled that you've funded. It's 2,000 projects statewide, $130 billion worth of capital projects, $22 billion in the first 6 months. We just got back from a delegation trip to DC, and our delegation is aware of this, but I don't know that they feel the urgency that I believe they need to feel. I would encourage all of us and everybody in this room to make sure that our voices are heard through our delegation in a very bipartisan way, because that's what it will take, but also even through our associations, associations like ASHTO and the regional councils and AMPO. It's going to take a huge effort to make sure this doesn't really hit us really hard, because it could be devastating.
Thank you, James. We'll see you tomorrow, I'm sure, as well, hopefully. So, any questions? If not, we will move on to the next item, 22, the road charge.
Yes, Commissioners, tab 22 is an informational item to provide an update on the California Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC. The TAC was statutorily created in 2014 following the passage of SB 1077, which required the development of a statewide road charge pilot program, which was completed in 2017. SB 1077 directed that the road charge TAC was to remain until January 2019. However, the TAC was extended to January 2023 following the passage of SB 1328 in 2018. The TAC has 3 scheduled meetings this calendar year. The first of these meetings took place on April 26th, which was Commissioner Dunn's first meeting as a TAC's new chair. At this meeting, the TAC members heard from Caltrans regarding their plans to develop 2 new road charge-related demonstration pilots using $3.8 million in federal funds received by Caltrans. The TAC members also approved a guiding objective and an action plan. The guiding objective is a concise statement that says, California serves as a national leader on road charge policies and effectively implements and administers a phased-in road charge program that provides long-term, sustainable, reliable, and sufficient funding to meet California's transportation system needs. The tax action plan lays out the primary priorities for the next several years. These priorities include, first, following up with the California State Transportation Agency on previous road charge recommendations that were identified in the 2018 Commission's annual report to the legislature. Second is to educate opinion leaders and stakeholders on road charge. Third is to research and better prepare California for implementation of a road charge program. And 4, advise the Commission on road charge issues for purposes of ultimately advising the legislature and administration through the Commission's annual reports. That concludes my update on road charge.
Do we have any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Garth. We'll move on. Terry, item 23.
What's that? I know it was, yeah. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm very happy to get to this point of presenting the draft shop guidelines to you. Oh, I have control. I have to do everything, Gina, thanks.
Self-help.
Yes. The process of reviewing the existing guidelines and identifying areas of focus began last fall. And this was a collaborative effort between CTC staff and Caltrans, as well as input that we received from stakeholders at the workshop that we held in March. I want to specifically give a call out thanks to Richard Estrada, who had been on loan from Caltrans for, I guess it was probably 6 months that he came and helped us. And he was very instrumental in helping me look at the guidelines and get this moving. Also, I want to give thanks to Donna Berry and her team. They were a lot of help. There was a lot of back and forth meetings. I'm not even sure how many meetings and how much candy went down between the groups. As we looked at the existing guidelines, the lens that we used to look at those to determine what areas needed to have updates were a couple of things. One was looking at what the purpose of the guidelines is, and then also keeping in mind what the Commission expectations are with respect to accountability and transparency in delivering projects. So what I want to highlight for you today, it is a 28-page document. I'm not going to go through each page. I just want to hit on some of the key highlights and some of the changes that you're looking at. So the first one is we took a look at the organization of the information in the guidelines, and we felt like in some places it was a little disjointed. So again, thank you to Richard Estrada who took a look at this, and I asked him, take a look at how a project is developed, all the way from, you know, when things get adopted into the shop, when things get programmed, allocated, changes that occur, and the accountability at the end. And so that's what you see now. If you look at the flow of information, it sort of follows that life of a project. Another change that occurred, and this was due to Assembly Bill 515, it amended streets and highway codes and made a requirement that the department put together a document called the State Highway System Management Plan, which you're going to hear about again later in the meeting. But this document replaced what Caltrans had been producing, which was the 10-year shop plan and the 5-year maintenance plan. So within our document that we're proposing, we also made those changes to the nomenclature. Another change was the existing document talked about project study reports. Caltrans has moved away from that terminology, and a more generic terminology that they use now is the project initiation document. So again, because this is a collaborative effort, it made more sense for us to embrace that terminology in our document. It wasn't really a big change, but these are the types of changes that we looked at as we went through the document, you know, and looked for things that just didn't seem up to date and consistent anymore. Okay, so some of the bigger changes, though, right-of-way capital. So as you know, annually, Caltrans presents to the commission a lump sum request for what they think is going to come forward for right-of-way activities for that fiscal year. And so what we're proposing is a little bit more accountability and reporting from right-of-way on what those activities are. So you'll be seeing them come forward with quarterly reports that sort of show you what expenditures are happening over the course of the year. And then we also decided that we do want to have a little bit more accountability for projects that have the potential for higher risk. So we looked at a couple different thresholds, and the one that we settled on that seemed to make sense was a $10 million threshold. So if a project has right-of-way capital of $10 million or more, those projects have to come in for an individual allocation for right-of-way capital. It's not a lot of projects, by the way, if that's what you may have that question for me. It probably looks like in the 2018 shop that we're looking at for shop only about 3 projects, and I believe in the STIP it's probably about 6 projects, assuming that the STIP adopts the same guidelines, which I think probably, yes, okay. So there's that. Okay, right-of-way support. Another thing we looked at, and this was with discussions with Caltrans, is right-of-way support activities start happening in design, and they can continue all the way through construction. So what we have right now is we only allow 36 months for timely use of funds with any of our phases or any of our support allocations. So it didn't make sense for right-of-way support because it's really 2 phases. So what we're doing is we're allowing for 72 months for right-of-way support for the timely use of funds. If at the end of that 72 months or 6 years, if they determine that they have issues that they still need extra time, they can come in one time only and ask for additional time. The other thing we didn't do is we didn't tie that additional request to 20 months. Again, right-of-way just tends to be a little bit different. They're dealing with property owners, utility companies, other issues that come up. So they can only come in one time, but we're not going to say just for 20 months, but they'll have to identify at the end of the 6 years exactly what the issues are and why they need extra time. Change management, and again, this was just more of a noticing some inconsistencies. The G12 resolution that is used for adjustments to allocations had language in there that talked about scope changes and significant, well, I'm not going to put significant, scope changes were supposed to come to the commission for approval. And I didn't see that language or that emphasis within the guidelines. So I'm putting this language in the guidelines to say that commission needs to approve any project performance measure changes. Another significant change had to do with baseline agreements. So the existing threshold for SHOP is if the construction capital and support, right-of-way capital, right-of-way support is $15 million or greater. There's another caveat, but let's just work on the 15. So if it's 15 or more, they have to do a baseline agreement. And at that threshold, it's probably over 220 projects that would need a baseline agreement. What we're proposing is to look at a total project cost of greater than or equal to 40 million. And at that threshold, it's just under 70 projects that would need to come in for a baseline agreement approval. So we're still keeping a focus on the projects that have a higher risk without weighing down Caltrans with too much bureaucracy that you know, we do get a lot of reporting from Caltrans, so we feel like this is a comfortable level. In addition to the guidelines, I did look through a lot of the resolutions that are associated with the shop, and so there was 3 in particular that we will also be coming back in June with some proposes and for your approval. One is to the G12. Again, it's the allocation adjustments. We're not proposing any policy changes to that. It's just, there's some language in there that needs some cleaning up. The minor program, we are looking at some, again, minor policy changes. And again, none of these are a surprise to Caltrans. They're fully aware of these. And the last one has to do with the right-of-way capital lump sum, and a lot of that has to do with what I mentioned earlier about the $10 million. So we will be bringing these in June. We will also be bringing back then we'll have a shop hearing. We're required to have a shop hearing. It's in the guidelines. So we'll have a shop hearing at the June meeting, and then we'll present to you the final set of guidelines for your approval and adoption. And if you have any questions.
Do you have any questions for Terry? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Okay, so with that, on my little, oh, we do have a speaker, excuse me. Pardon me, thanks Doug for keeping me honest. Esther, come on down.
Sorry, I should have been closer. Esther Rivera from California Walks. Just want to thank staff for the work that they've done on these guidelines. We also want to recognize the fact that there was inclusion of some SU1 pieces, including complete streets and climate change, which are included in the guidelines. We want to recognize this inclusion and believe that it's vital to consider and include these elements from a cost efficiency perspective. And we also see that there are ways that this also helps to meet accountability under SB1 and transparency, and we look forward to seeing that strengthened in the guidelines more for complete streets and climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have another speaker, Dave Snyder.
Hello again, thank you. Dave Snyder, California Bicycle Coalition. I'm here representing my staffer, Jared Sanchez, who has pointed out an issue about the shop guidelines that it deserves your attention, and that is its inclusion of auxiliary lanes as legitimate expenses under the SHOP program has led to project sponsors using SHOP money to expand highways and to add capacity, probably inappropriately. He's identified 41 projects in the last SHOP program that used auxiliary lanes, many of which were parts of projects that were expansion projects. So we would love for you to tighten that a bit and not allow auxiliary lanes to be a legitimate expense, or somehow do a better job of making sure that when they're truly auxiliary lanes and they're not a backdoor way to increase highway capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think we're finished with that item, but thank you. Okay, now we're going to take like a 5 or 6 minute break on your